In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use chipping medium to create an Alpha Legion Infiltrator. Also, while I decided to do this Marine disguise as an Imperial Fist, you can use the same technique for any Legion disguise. To start with, I paint the model in my traditional Alpha Legion color scheme, which starts off with a layer of Vallejo metal color Magnesium over the entire model, followed up with a zenithal highlight of Vallejo metal color Aluminum. Next, I mix up some turquoise ink by mixing about 4 drops of scale 75 Cyan Ink, 3 drops of scale 75 green ink, and about 10 drops of thinner. This ink is then applied in 2 to 3 even thin coats over the entire model, and I prefer to use multiple thin coats here as I find it gives a better, more richer color than using one thick coat. I know I kind of blew through the steps I used here to paint this Alpha Legion color scheme, but if you're interested in a full tutorial, I have another video here in the top right corner you can check out, and also link in the description below. After I'm happy with the armor color, I apply a couple of Alpha Legion decals on the shoulder pads and leg armor. I wanted to make sure that the finished model could clearly be identified as an Alpha Legionnaire in disguise, but I was a bit worried that just some light chipping would not really sell the look I was going for. So my hope was that by giving these large icons and then chipping away the paint on top of them, it'd be obvious to anyone viewing the model what I was going for. After the decals dried, I then sprayed a layer of gloss varnish over the entire model. As I will be literally scratching away the yellow paint I'll be applying next, I want to ensure the Alpha Legion scheme is fairly protected so I don't accidentally scratch through to the bare plastic or primer. I also did some silver sponge chipping at this stage, as my thought was that the silver would show up after removing the yellow layer next, and would help to sell the appearance that the Marine's armor was fairly beat up from intense fighting. I won't pretend to have any idea what chipping medium actually is, but in effect it adds a water-soluble layer to your model, which enables you to rub off or scratch this layer and any paint on top of it by applying water later on. Chipping medium also comes in different strengths, which correspond to how easy it is to remove. For this model, I decided to use scratching effects, which is harder to remove than say chipping effects or heavy chipping effects. I'm also using a product by MIG Ammo here, but any brand should work, and you can even use hairspray to do this technique if you'd like to. This chipping medium is applied in a single thin layer over the entire model through my airbrush. You want to apply only one thin layer here, as the more you apply, the more risk you run of a very large area just kind of peeling away when you add water to it later on. Once the chipping medium is dry, I move on to painting the Imperial Fist yellow. I decided to do a fairly simple Imperial Fist scheme here, as this model will already have a lot going on with the Alpha Legion scheme showing through, and didn't want to overcomplicate the model. For the yellow, I start off by applying 2 or 3 thin layers of Scale 75 Sahara Yellow. One thing I wanted to note here is that Scale 75 paints are fairly transparent actually, and I had to do a couple of layers to get a good solid base yellow color on this model, which might contribute to some challenges of chipping it off later on. So if you're going to do this scheme yourself, I'd recommend picking maybe another brand of paint, but I only had Scale 75 on hand at the time when I did this. I then follow up by doing a simple zenithal highlight of Scale 75 Soul Yellow to get a little bit of contrast into the model and bring up to a brighter yellow coloration. Now that I've painted this model twice, I can finally start this chipping process. To do so, I dip my brush into some clean water and start trying to rub off the yellow paint. As you can see here, it's working pretty well. I'm not getting any of the hard chipped edges, and instead it looks like I'm just kind of gently dissolving the yellow paint. So next I grab my X-Acto knife and use this to carefully scratch away some of the yellow paint. I did have to be careful here though, to not scratch all the way through to the plastic underneath the Alpha Legion colors, so I only applied a little bit of pressure to my knife tip. I still wasn't quite satisfied with the chipping around the armor edges though, and I was worried that by using my X-Acto knife here I really would scratch all the way through to the bare plastic or primer. So next I grabbed a super old GW tank brush and went to work trying to rub off more of the yellow. This tank brush has extremely stiff bristles, which I think makes it work so well for this process, as it really does abrade away the paint over the armor. If you don't have a 20-year-old brush lying around though, any stiff bristled brush should work. There's not really a right way to do this chipping step, so just have fun with it and stop whenever you get to a point you're happy with. I then spray the entire model in yet another coat of gloss varnish to lock in the chipping medium and prevent myself from accidentally rubbing off the yellow paint in the future. I also put an Imperial Fist chapter badge decal on the right shoulder pad at this step. For the last step of this scheme, I grab some hobby shading in a bottle, or streaking grime, and slap it over the entire model. This is a very standard application of streaking grime that I've used many times before in previous videos, where I apply it over the entire model, let it dry, and rub it off with a foam makeup sponge. If you want to see a more detailed step-by-step process of how I do this though, I threw a tutorial up in the upper right hand corner of the screen that has a pretty good section on the enamel wash step. The armor is then finished off with a layer of gloss varnish to kill off all of the shine of previous varnish layers and to lock in the enamel wash. The rest of the model is painted fairly simply, using rather standard techniques for things like the eyes and bolter. So that's pretty much it for this model. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, as I guess YouTube likes those kind of things and interactions with viewers. I don't know. As always, thanks for watching and hobby on.